Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into some truly fascinating source material, Surah 10 of the Quran, also known as Yunus, or Jonah. But we're not just looking at this as some ancient historical document. Actually, we're going to be reading it as a profoundly deep, diagnostic manual for human consciousness. It's literally a text that breaks down exactly how we process truth, how we build our belief systems, and frankly, why we so often end up just completely getting in our own way. So I want to kick things off with a paradox. It's the core problem sitting right at the very heart of this text. Ask yourself, if the ultimate absolute truth was placed right in front of you, like dropped right in your lap, would you actually accept it, or would you ask for something that just better fits your current assumptions? I mean, we all really like to think we'd accept the truth immediately, right? But as the text diagnoses, this right here is humanity's core struggle. All right, let's jump into Section 1, the paradox of clarity. Notice exactly how this text opens up. Verse 10:1 states, Aleph, Lam, Ra. Those are the signs of the wise, decisive book. Right out of the gate, no hesitation, it identifies itself as perfectly clear. It's saying it has the power to just cut right through all of our confusion. It presents itself as a completely finished, fully sufficient manual. But that kind of begs the question, right? If it's so incredibly clear, why do people constantly turn away from it? Well, verses 10:15 and 10:16 tell us exactly what happens. When this super clear text is recited, people actually ask the messenger to swap it out. Literally, they say, bring a Quran other than this or change it. It's such a wild human tendency when you think about it. The original message is completely 100% sufficient, and yet people demand a truth that conforms to their existing preferences. Instead of changing themselves to fit the truth, they want the truth to change to fit them. Moving right along to Section 2, Truth versus Human Assumption. The text actually pinpoints the root cause for this rejection, and it uses this really powerful Arabic term, Dhann. Dhann basically translates to assumption, conjecture, guesswork, or even inherited tradition. And the surah comes down really hard on this reliance on Dhann. It argues that people have this habit of constructing these massive, intricate religious or philosophical systems based on absolutely nothing but guesswork. And then, to make matters worse, they falsely attribute those human-made assumptions to divine authority. And verse 1036, it is completely uncompromising on this point. It says, indeed, conjecture is not a substitute for the truth in any way. It's basically saying, look, you absolutely cannot swap out objective reality with your own guesswork, no matter how warm and comfortable that guesswork makes you feel. It just doesn't work that way. So we're left looking at this incredibly stark, unavoidable divide. On one side, you've got Haqq, that's objective truth, solid reality, absolutely certain knowledge. On the other side, you've got Dhann, flimsy human assumptions and fragile conjecture. The surah is essentially daring humanity to abandon those comfortable, inherited systems, cross the bridge, and engage directly with cold, hard, objective reality. Now, because of this super strict division between truth and assumption, the text lays out a very clear chain of authority. First off, judgment and legislation belong exclusively to the divine, period. Secondly, the whole idea of intercessors, people who can sort of mediate for you or pull strings, that is fundamentally rejected unless there's explicit permission. And third, and this is huge, there is no human interpretive class that holds authority over the text. There are no gatekeepers here. You are completely expected to engage with it directly yourself. Which brings us to Section 3, the exception of Jonah. To really appreciate the exception, we kind of have to understand the rule first. Throughout the surah, we see this historical cycle repeating over and over with past civilizations. Step 1, clear guidance arrives. Pretty straightforward. Step 2, the people totally reject that guidance because they'd rather stick to their own assumptions, their Dhann. And Step 3, natural, completely destructive consequences inevitably follow. It's this tragic, repeating loop of willful unconsciousness that just leads straight to ruin. But here is the massive twist in the narrative, and it's where Yunus, Jonah, comes in. According to verse 1098, the people of Yunus actually broke the cycle. They are the exception to the rule. They're the only community mentioned that actually responded to the warning and shifted their conscious state before the consequences became irreversible. Because they woke up in time, the text says the punishment of disgrace was entirely removed from them. They're literally the namesake of the surah, because they managed to do what the rest of humanity continually struggles to do. They chose clarity over their own assumptions. Let's move to Section 4, healing the human psyche. So how do we actually become that exception? Verse 1057 offers this unbelievably profound description.
It says, "O humanity, there has come to you instruction from your sustainer and healing for what is in the chests." The Arabic word used right there is shifa, which means healing. So think about that. The text isn't presenting itself as just some rulebook of outward rituals. It's presenting itself as a psychological tool to clear out all our internal resentment, fear, and ego. It's designed to heal you from the inside out.
So what exactly are we healing from? Well, the primary illness diagnosed here is called ghafla. That means heedlessness, or living completely unconsciously. Just imagine the ultimate form of being on autopilot, right? Like you're endlessly doom-scrolling through your own life, totally absorbed in the superficial stuff, and completely detached from deeper reality. The surah suggests that humanity's root problem isn't even necessarily a lack of belief, it's just being asleep at the wheel. The entire goal of the text is to constantly push the reader to move from being among the ghafilun, the heedless, unconscious folks, to becoming the yatafakkarun, the people who actively reflect, contemplate, and live with deep, intentional awareness. This state of ultimate awareness? That's called taqwa. So really, the entire healing process of this text is simply this one massive migration. It's about going from sleepwalking through life to finally waking up.
And that takes us to our final section, Section 5, Individual Authority and Choice.
Because the authority here is entirely unmediated, no middlemen, the text throws down a really direct challenge to skeptics in verse 1038. It says, "Then bring a surah like it." And to be clear, this is not just some poetry contest. It's a functional, real-world challenge. It's basically saying, okay, if you genuinely think this system is just human conjecture, just Dhann, then go ahead and try to produce a human-made system that is just as logically consistent and just as effective at transforming the human state without causing massive division. But even with that incredibly bold challenge on the table, the text is fundamentally anti-authoritarian when it comes down to human belief. Verse 1099 is amazing. It states, "And had your sustainer willed, all who were on earth would have believed entirely. Will you then compel people?" It makes it absolutely 100% clear that belief has to be a free choice. It utterly rejects any form of coercion or compulsion when it comes to consciousness. Because think about it, you can't force someone to heal, and you definitely can't force someone to wake up from heedlessness if they want to stay asleep. To sum up this entire resolution, verse 1010 lays out the parameters perfectly. First, the messenger's role is literally just to deliver the message clearly, not to enforce it. Second, whoever chooses guidance does so entirely for their own benefit. And third, whoever chooses to go astray does so completely to their own detriment. The text removes all the scapegoats. It places the ultimate burden of proof, the choice, and the accountability squarely and unavoidably right on the individual's shoulders. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. We've seen how Surah 10 masterfully diagnoses our very human tendency to replace clear truth with comfortable assumption. We've looked at the tragic cycle of history, and we've explored the profound internal healing it offers to wake us up from unconscious living. The source material couldn't be clearer. The text is completely sufficient, but the choice to actually engage with it without relying on your own assumptions is entirely up to you. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. The guidance is clear, but the choice is yours. Are you gonna be the exception?